Good evening, everybody. Sorry to interrupt the discussions, but welcome to this, what do we got, November 21st Board of Directors meeting of the Harlan Community School District, and welcome everybody, visitors as well.
Look at our guy.
We got a guy swimming up there. Okay, so we have tonight on the Policy Committee, Albertson, Blatt, and Hertzberg, and on the Finance, Scheckinger and Hazelton. And first thing on the agenda here is to call the meeting to order and to determine the quorum, and I think everybody's here except Monty had a tractor that he was dealing with, so he couldn't come tonight. And so I guess we have a quorum, right, Catherine?
Yes, sir.
Put us down for that. And item B is the public forum, and we always recognize that we welcome citizens to come and speak to the board of directors. And I believe Catherine said that there was no one that asked to speak to us tonight. And so from there we'll go from B right to item C, which is to approve the agenda. We got a few items on the agenda tonight, so we'll just keep going through it one by one. Is there any discussion on the agenda? Okay, should I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll move to approve the agenda.
On that.
Second.
Great. Seconding. All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay. All those opposed, nay. Did I leave anything out, Al? Doing okay so far. Okay.
Am I supposed to be paying attention?
Right. Okay. Next we have D, the discussion items. And so here we turn the table over to Dr. Barnett to tell us about the superintendent report.
Fast. Real quickly, just wanted to show some pictures of the girls wrestling. We got that up and running, and I think, we've got some high school and middle school girls?
Yep, three middle school and one high school.
So that was exciting, that they had their first match. And there they are with the Riverside girls, so seems to be going well.
I'm sorry, two, I'm sorry, how many? How many
I have
girls?
3 middle school
Three.
and 1 high school.
Okay.
And then I wanted to show you the state championship game. We got the band, we have the band going. I don't know if you can hear. Oh, you can't hear, shoot. So, there we go. Oh! Let me try that was at dire need times in that last game. Great.
I think that was the third game.
Okay. Is that the end? Or they did that kind of in...
I think this was going into
Okay. That was good. Then we had just tons of student athletes there. All the cheerleaders were there as well. These are the boys after the team. And then we had 3 girls that made the state honor cheer choir. So Tila Schwery, Lainey Brayfogel, and Zoe Bowers. Mm-hmm. And our Veterans Day had a great celebration, and there's Al right there. There's our guy. And Neil Ferguson is also, he drives the bus for us, so he was representing, along with Charlie Parkhurst and Kenny Olson.
And Kenny's a retired bus driver.
Yeah. He worked on a lot of buses too.
So that is just, oops, my report. Sorry about that. What did I just do? We'll go back and do student accolades here.
Well, we have a number of things. So you've got Daniela Ruiz, who is Citizen of the Week, I think from a couple weeks ago. And then you have our instructional coach. I know they're not students, but they just finished their instructional coaching cycles, and they just happen to be wearing the same shirt on the same day. So I took a picture of them. So they'll be happy to know that I shared that with you guys. Yeah, they did a great job. They've got 8 coaching cycles done in the first week. So, the first quarter. So what they do is on their coaching cycles is they meet with teachers, they plan with them, and then they team teach together and provide feedback and look at their student data and just help teachers be better at their craft. So that's why they're on there. And then we have Hallie Shields is the next gal. She was Citizen of the Week. about a week ago. And then we have some duplicate pictures on this one, I think, the bottom left one we just went through. We had our assembly as well for our Veterans Day program, and I think we wear out the veterans, so because they come over here and then they go over there. It's pretty energetic with all those elementary kids, but it's good for the elementary kids to. It's probably better for them than it is for the veterans, just to be a part of it and try to understand and figure out what that day is all about. So
Yeah, they really acted like they appreciated it.
yeah,
They were doing really well.
yeah.
They gave us little things they had drawn and
Yeah,
came up and said thank you.
Yeah, we had about probably, 30 or 40 veterans there, and each kid made a thank you. So we had over 700 thank yous and only, 45 veterans. So they each had plenty to read through if they grabbed them. So, and then upper right, we had a Special Olympics. Our first Special Olympics event of the year was over in Adele, and so some of those are our kids up there in the upper right hand, some of them aren't, but they participated. So Eva Laver is the coordinator of that, and she's doing a fantastic job. And then our next board meeting we'll have more information about the goings on with our Special Olympics. So we kind of had a big honor. And then the last one, am I talking too fast at the?
Oh, sorry, Jeff.
I'm taking too long. That's like the hook.
I thought it was veterans. I was thinking this was a Veterans Day concert. Sorry.
Well, that was the 4th and 5th
Okay.
grade concert, which they do sing Veterans Day type songs and honor the veterans, but that's also their concert that they do every year. So that was a big hit as well, and Miss Peak does a great job, and the kids were fabulous and a lot of fun. They like it. They post pictures of their family members who might have been veterans up on the wall so people can go over, and they do little writing projects and art. So it's more than just a music program. It incorporates some other things as well. So those are the accolades.
At the Veterans Day program that the kids sang the national anthem, Ms. Peak had them.
Yes.
And it was excellent. They should do it at a ball game or something.
Oh, that would be a great idea. Yeah.
They filled that half of it.
Yeah.
Actually, really cool idea.
Oh, they were
Paula
so
Kiergaard.
good.
I guess I didn't mention their names. It's Paula Kiergaard and Kay Goshorn are our instructional coaches. Sorry, I should have said that. Paula on the left and Kay on the right. Yeah. Yeah. So, and on that, our elementary chorus every year goes and sings the national anthem at the hockey game.
Yeah.
Is it the Wolves?
Oh,
Is that right?
Lancers.
Yeah.
Des Moines.
It's really
Des Moines.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The Wild.
The Wild, yeah, sorry. I should know that. But they go every year and walk out on the ice, and they love that as well. So, yeah. So that's the goings on at the elementary.
Awesome. Middle school.
So that first picture, at the end of each quarter, we have teachers that nominate students of the quarter. So they pick a student that's in their class or course that represents good character, hardworking, citizenship. So it's not necessarily about the person that had the highest test score or highest grade, but the type of student that we want, that emulates what we want to see in terms of being a good classmate. And so there's the people that got selected from each grade level and subject for first quarter. And then we have a little lunch with them and try to talk to them about what it means to be a good student, because some of them just think, well, I'm just being who I'm supposed to be type thing. And then we ask them for input on things that they would like to see changed about maybe the middle school, or some things that they appreciate that we need to keep in place. So that was where the students of the quarter for first quarter. And that next picture down there on the bottom left is 6th grade science. So they're doing a lab on chemical change. So the thing I like about our science department is they really do science. You know, sometimes some kids just read the chapter and answer the questions type thing. And so our kids really like science because they're actually doing science. And then over on the right-hand side, that is Mr. Brummer there, and he's doing a unit on text evidence. And so that's 6th grade language arts.
The high school, or that first picture there's a bunch of senior girls and they all had their jeans painted. I said, hey, if I bring in a pair of jeans, will you paint them up for me? They said, yeah, we would. So I need to get a pair of jeans in. But a lot of school spirit the last few weeks and all year, but just with the playoffs and everything. The next picture that's the Veterans Day Assembly. I'm trying to squint because we had the Veterans Day Assembly, and then right after that, kids stayed in and we did a quick pep rally with students as they headed to the semifinals game. We also had the senior moms come in, and the boys, we tricked the senior boys into thinking that there was a girl coming down to kiss them, but it was their mom. They were blindfolded. And everybody, the crowd got a bigger hoot out of it than the boys did. That's pretty good. So the next picture is of the band, I just love to watch them play because they play loud enough for everybody in that whole dome to hear it. So you can see them, they're really giving it their all. And then the bottom left corner is the whiteout. RJ went and found a UNI officer, right? Because the kids wanted to do the roller coaster cheer that he always does with them at games. And he said, oh, it won't be as fun with me here. So he went and found a UNI officer and convinced him to go down and do the roller coaster with him. The kids thought that was
Really had to
cool.
twist his arm.
Yeah, so that was fun.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you guys.
Fun.
Okay, I think we're ready for this one. Ready for Travis.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is D3, the consideration of sealed bids opened and reviewed by the superintendent of schools, treasurer of the board, secretary of the board, and financial advisor. Okay, this is for the not to exceed $10 million general obligation school bond series 2022. So we'll put you on, Travis, and I'll ask you something. If you could, your knowledge is way up here. So if you could be clear and concise, because we're not nearly as educated on this.
So you don't want to talk like swap rates and various market things. I get it.
So we can understand.
No, you guys do a good job, and we'll kind of keep it pretty straightforward and simple. I will kind of hit a few of the things that would normally be what I'll call kind of plan of finance items. And so this will be up on the screen as well. I think there's a
There's an
handout.
extra one back.
Oh, okay.
Underneath it.
Everyone should have one, please let us know. Somebody need one?
I have an extra one. Unless you say Monty.
You have Monty's.
I have Monty.
You have to study twice.
There will be a quiz on the packet. There you go.
You gotta take the quiz.
The right answer is I. So when you get to go ahead and slide through the next page then. So I'm going to talk a little bit about just the financing process, give you a market update. The bulk of this packet does have some just information on rates, and this is just more kind of setting the stage so you understand what we're looking at on the backside, as well as just give you some comfort level of where we're at in terms of overall interest rates. We'll talk about the results from the bid today, and then we'll talk about how that fits into your overall financing plan for the, what I'll call the planned $32 million of projects that the voters authorized. With 22.9 coming from GO bonds and the rest from sales tax. And then any summary, commentary, or questions you guys might have, we can hit those at the end. But do feel free to interrupt as we're going through. So in terms of the process, we put together a financing plan this summer with the district administration and construction team to try to figure out how do we put a plan together that is all-encompassing of your resources and easy to understand. So you heard these talking points, a 233 debt levy, utilizing a portion of our sales tax as part of the overall package. So reducing your property taxes by committing sales tax for a portion of the project. And after your vote passed, we talked with administration that there are some what I'll call kind of tax nuances that allow you to take advantage of selling less than $10 million in a calendar year, where you get some benefit in terms of your overall interest rate. So we set down the path to try to accomplish that here for calendar year 22. So that brings us to today. We went through a bond rating process, official statement or bond offering document, all of these steps that you've had at your last couple meetings, and then Over the last couple of weeks, the bond offering documents have quote unquote kind of been out on the street as soon as we got the bond rating last week. And then today was the day you were taking bids. So a little market information just to kind of come up, and I'm going to kind of slide through these quick. One of the things that's the most common that you guys will hear on interest rates is the Fed's moving interest rates. And so I want to just give you a chart to illustrate how has the Fed moved rates over the last 22 years. And it's been a yo-yo, right? It's up, it's down, it's flat, it's really cheap money for 7-8 years, and then it's trying to unwind it, and then it's COVID dropping the rates, and then it's crud, inflation. So you can see the movement on the tail end is what's happened over the last year. And you can see it's not all that unprecedented for the Fed to move rates up. The pace at which they've done it has been faster than what they've normally done. So key thing to note here is that a lot of what you're doing in terms of borrowing rates is actually delinked from what the Fed is doing. I was actually talking with a banker today, and he said, if I'm looking to do a rate on a 2-year loan, it actually might be higher than what I'm trying to give a loan at 10 years, just based on the bank's cost of funding. So it's a little bit odd time in the market right now. Normally you say, well, you get compensated for going out risk, but when you got inflation expectations that the Fed will do something, it does play with the market a little bit. So the next couple charts are then just going to give you a kind of an outlook of what's happened recently.
I had a question where it says plus 225 BPS. Does that mean basis point? 2.25
Yes,
basis
correct.
points?
Yeah, basis points is 0.01%. So 300 basis points is 3%. 200 basis points is 2%.
Okay.
So the common thing that you'll hear from the Fed is they're moving rates 75 basis points. So they're moving their overnight borrowing rate 0.75%.
And then could you just go back 1 second and talk a little bit about bond rating? Because we were pretty good on that, right?
Yeah, so you got an A rating, which is what I'll call kind of standard for districts. You were on the cusp of maybe moving up, but they just want to see another year of your financial results post ESSER money. So the rating agency view right now is that ESSER money is kind of creating havoc on the balance sheets. So they want to see how the dust settles. So for you guys, you go back 4 years, you had a downgrade, and you've done everything in your power as a board to earn the upgrade, but for maybe having another year. So
What's ESSER money?
So that's your federal COVID relief money.
I see.
So
Okay.
that's you get it in 3 different pots of ESSER money.
And so what is the ratings? What do they go to? Usually if I got an A, that was the best rating.
Yeah, so
You have plus pluses or something?
yeah, so you have A and then double A.
Okay.
Most school districts fall in the A rating,
Mhm.
and then you can have A minus, A, and A plus, and you
I
guys
see.
are sitting at A. So I think there's potential into the future of that, what I'll call a notch up to A plus. There's some things that will limit you, size of the district, and so forth, but you guys have done everything in the board's power at this point to put yourselves in a good position. And at the end of the day, the Harlan name is a strong name too when you go to the market and try to sell the bonds.
What are we missing by not being an A plus?
Some days 0, some days it's maybe 0.05% or 5 basis points. That's probably what I would see as the maximum impact today on your bonds. But overall, I feel good about where you're at. We'll find out later that even with your A rating, the underwriter purchased bond insurance, so they're selling in the market as a double A anyway. So I think the impact is pretty minimal, in other words. These next 3 slides are just semi-interesting in my mind because you look at things that have happened in the market. It was actually a pretty crazy market last week where we saw interest rates drop about 0.25% in what I'll call our bond market rates. So call it dumb luck or whatever it is, you time the market well. If we were selling bonds a week ago, you probably would have been closer to 4.2. And you're at 395, not to spoil the presentation.
Say that again.
395 would be the rate. So the other thing that we look at is what's happened. So that was what happened in the last week. Yep, this is what has happened in the last year. And we're taking a benchmark on a 10-year, and you can see a year ago, the 10-year market benchmark was at 1%. It peaked at nearly 3.5%. So this has been the movement that we've seen in the bond market related to what the Fed has done with their rates. Not that they're directly tied to each other, but in this instance, inflation expectations have also impacted your borrowing rates. If you go to this longer term view, we're going to go out to a 10-year. It's a slightly different benchmark, but it's meant to be what I'll call kind of the average, like AAA GO bond. And, currently it'd be in that 375 range. You're not AAA, and, Iowa isn't double exempt, or we still have taxes on state. So that kind of does explain the 375 market benchmark to the 395 that you got today. But you can see this run up in this rate. However, when we zoom out to a 10-year horizon, you can see we're not at the peak. In fact, we've had a couple different peaks higher than where we're at right now. So this is kind of the range. You fall within this 10-year range, and you're a little higher than the average. So benchmark 5. And this has just kind of been more of the backdrop that we've been seeing. I don't know which one causes which, but this is basically supply and demand. And if you go to the next page, we had 15 straight weeks of money leaving the bond market, and last week was the first week that we had money into the market. And so that's part of what led to this rally, but we've just had a lot of money moving out. And the best way I can explain this is that bond market prices move opposite of rates. And so if you think rates are going to go up, that means your investment will be worth less tomorrow. So what's the incentive for you to buy today if it'll be worth less tomorrow? So what we see is a lot of people kind of sitting on the sidelines with their money. Started to see a little bit of normalcy here over the last couple of weeks. That's really been driven by CPI inflation from a couple weeks ago, where it was like, oh, maybe inflation's peaked. So some of the market interpreted as that. It's where you looked at your 401k from one Tuesday to a Wednesday, you saw it go up 5% in a day. The bond market has kind of followed suit in some cases. So a little bit more confidence in the economy.
When you say money in versus money out, what you're really saying, there was more bonds paid off than loans that were made?
Yeah, and more sellers in the market. Like I'm selling, I'm getting out of this. I don't want to own this asset that might go down tomorrow if rates keep going up.
So it's basic supply and demand.
Yep.
I read in the newspaper that there's more demand for these types of bonds than
today
supply.
There's not a ton of supply right now because we're getting close to the end of the year, but what you see here is that supply is still, there's still money leaving the market right now. So absent this last week. So these have been those are big spikes of money leaving the market. But there's a little bit more confidence today than there was a week ago. All right, so the next slide, then just kind of where are we in this 10-year range? We already kind of hit some of this. So move to 7. Because this is really like, why does this even matter? Why am I talking about this? And really, my purpose of boring you with the interest rate movement is just to reiterate that we have some dynamics as we're going through the rest of your financial plan that we're going to have to pay attention to as it relates to your project construction budget. The biggest thing that we have right now is if we look at this, do rates matter? I'm going to take a scenario of a $1 million bond payment, and I'm going to show you on a chart how that $1 million bond payment over 20 years translates back into project funds. So a year ago when everybody was giddy, borrowing a little bit north of 2%, that $1 million payment would have given me $16.3 million of project funds. Today, we're in a 4% environment. That $1 million payment gives me $13.6 million of project funds. Why? I have a fixed payment, and more of it is going to interest. So the principal amount of the loan is what converts back to project dollars. The good news in your scenario is that we weren't planning in a 2% environment. We were planning in about a 3.5% environment. So we've had to make a few adjustments from this summer to where we're at right now. But overall, in the 4% rate environment, your project budget stays intact. If we see major differences from that, we're gonna have to keep talking, okay, is our project budget still 32, or are we gonna have to make some adjustments either to come up with some more resources, either cash on hand or whatever it might be, or more sales tax money. Your property tax exposure, though, is what it is, right? We've said 233. I don't see anything right now that causes any deviation from that 233 rate. Where we might have deviations is, do we need, an extra $50,000 per year of sales tax in order to hold that $32 million budget intact? So we won't know any of that until we get after the first of the year.
You said you had to make some adjustments. What
Yep.
does that mean too?
I'll talk about that a little bit later.
And another question is, in the future, is it an option to make the project less than the 32 million if there isn't enough room in the sales tax?
Yeah,
Or in the
you can always make it smaller. That's great. If you're going to make it bigger, then you have to call me.
But it has to be one of those two places, is that correct? Or
Yeah.
three places?
Yeah, it's sales tax. It's either sales tax cash or it's sales tax borrowed.
Sure. Okay.
Because what kind of money are we talking about to jump from that 3.5 climate to a 4? Are we talking $50,000?
Yeah, to kind of split the gap on that, if you look at between 3.5 and 4, right, the difference there is about 1.4 million in projects, 1.3 in projects. So you'd have about a $650,000 gap on that. Well, your overall debt payments between your two sources are a little bit or over 2 million between sales tax and GO bonds.
But
So
it's a pretty big deal of money for half of.
Yeah, so if we're doing it over 20 years and we got to close a $1.3 million gap,
Yeah.
it ends up being a little bit closer to 100,000.
Jade, I just ran it on an amortization schedule, and for every 1/4%, it's $1 million in payment. So 1% means $4 million over 20 years of interest. So it's pretty significant. This interest rate is important.
And is this a set rate or is it going to change?
So your rate today is fixed, right? So I'm going to talk through what's keeping us from fixing all of your rates in a little bit. So everybody good on this market update? Okay.
Thank you.
So the next one then is just, we kind of have a weekly slide. If you want some economic backdrop stuff, you can have at it. But this is just my standard 8 slides I go over on market update. So getting into bidding results. Go ahead to the next one. So you had a really good amount of participation. You had 8 bids today. That's really good. And you had 4 bids within 0.03% of each other. So it's a very tight bidding there. 3.95, 3.96, 3.98, 3.98 again. So you can tell that there's either a lot of confidence on where the market is, or they had a lot of the same investors talking to multiple underwriting firms. So the way that this works is that these firms are underwriting firms in the region, and this would be the names we would normally see. There's really not anybody missing in this list of regional bidders but Piper, and that's because Piper is your MA, so we're not allowed to bid on this GO bond financing. So with respect to any of these bonds, the investor, who might be a bank, banks can buy bonds from these underwriting firms, but we don't have any control or ability to direct that when we're an advisor on this. When we get into the sales tax, it may be a little bit different scenario where we've talked about some other alternate financing options. But in terms of the GO bonds, these are done at a sealed bid. So at 1 o'clock today, we opened the electronic bids, and the low bid then ranks at the top by what we call true interest rate. So that's an average rate that basically takes the interest costs that the underwriter will charge you and the fee that they charge to underwrite the bonds, and then it creates an average fee that you can compare. So that's the market standard for ranking bids by TIC, or true interest cost. So if you go to the winning bidder, one of the things that we require on most bond issues is that they'll pay you the face value of the bond. So you can see for 10 million, they're going to pay you 10,153,000. So it's a slight premium. And the way that the premium is generated, you can see rates, you see coupons in that schedule at 5 and 4, and then you can see the yields going from 3.05 up to 4.1. So most of the bonds have a dollar price slightly over 100. Those are called premium. It's less than 100, it's a discount. And so overall, the underwriter, net of their fee, is going to pay you $153,000 of premium. And so you're able to take that. So for this first 10 million of bonds, you have a little bit more than 10 million to spend. At the end of the day, when we get to what do we do if the project budget is different than 32 million? Well, that 153,000 premium allows you to reduce the amount you borrow against the sales tax right now. So that's a good thing. We did just a slight amount of resizing on the transaction. So this is the detail of the winning bid that came from Northland Securities. If you go to the next 2 pages, then do just kind of cycle through the other bids. They're very similar in terms of that interest rate or that coupon, and then you can see the true interest rates, the ranking there. So just a summary. Go ahead.
Possibly a dumb question, but if they bid on it, do they keep this for the life of it, or is it like the housing market where they sell it off then?
They sell it all off. So their goal is they own nothing at the end of the day.
Sure.
What I'll tell you right now, there have been a lot of bonds in inventory, so we do track what happens with inventory for bonds. So there were 2 bond sales last week, and what we call the dealers or the underwriters took some of the bonds into inventory to try to resell.
Yeah.
Whether they're betting on where the market's moving or not. When the moment they click send, and if they win, they own all your bonds, whether they've sold them or not. Most of the time, they are selling them to the end investors. Sometimes they get stuck because they're trying to bid as aggressively as they can to win the bid, but yet they might not have the end investor at a certain rate. So they don't always have it all pre-sold. And typically, unfortunately, they're not going to tell us who they sold everything to. So you may find out from some of your local banks that, hey, we bought $400,000 or $500,000 of these bonds.
So somebody local has the opportunity to hold some of it at some point.
Yeah, it all goes out for sale, right? So all the banks could submit orders in the pre-sale period of time. But then the post-sale, if there's 5 orders, and they came from various banks, they get allocated bonds.
Because they're making money off of buying our bonds. That's their ultimate goal.
That's their ultimate goal. Yep.
Okay.
Correct. Good question. It wasn't a dumb question. It was a good question.
Sure.
Okay, so when it gets down to it, where does this impact? And there are going to be talking points more than diving into the numbers here. So the first slide, this page that we're managing here. I just kind of want to talk you through what we're looking at. So we're looking at various series of bonds, and when that money comes in, to do one of 2 things. Match cash flow, meaning based on when de novo says you're going to spend the money, do you have money available? So that's goal number 1. Goal number 2 is looking at your levy rate. Can we deliver on the levy rate promise? And what we're showing on the far right, based on a sequencing of the debt on the far right, you're delivering on that 233 promise in our financial models. It is causing you to kind of time your bonds and selling some in 23, some in 24, maybe some in 25 to match your cash flow for your project. But right now we don't see any deviations. Things you could do, could you lock rates in sooner? Yeah, for a portion of the debt. And we'll know a lot more when you get your new valuations in January. So as I view that time period when your new valuations come in, will be an update to talking about your timing and sequencing of your debt issuance. So the next slide then picks up your sales tax debt. We have one planned debt issuance right now that would restructure some of your prior bonds and also provide for about $9.1 million of new project funds. If that's the case, you'll have then funded your $32 million project. You have a little bit of flexibility here. You're not at your maximum amounts here, but anything increase you make to your project budget cuts into how much money you have for buses, technology, maintenance, etc. as you move forward. So that's where your task as a board, keep it on budget. If there are various things that became more expensive that are really important for your project, you do have some flexibility there, right? But you need to weigh that against your increased cost as you guys finish through your schematic design development process. The next slide. This is the one that is probably the hardest to grasp. Each district in the state or municipality has to live within a debt limit constraint. A debt limit constraint for your district is 5% of your valuation before rollback. It's in those orange columns on that sheet. And we have to manage both the debt you're issuing and the debt you're paying off, and we have to make sure that that white column stays positive. And before you get really nervous about that negative $600,000 that's sitting there, just know that that's a timing and an allocation between two of your GO bond issues. Just the way that I simply modeled it out, we probably have to wait on $700,000 of bonds on your 24 and move them to 25. But that'll just be an issue that we address once we start knowing what happens with your valuation growth. So we're gonna have to watch this valuation growth profile. This one here is the one that's probably tightest on your project budget, which is why we really don't want you to have to borrow more money on this project. The other thing I will say right now is I am not giving you a deduct on your sales tax borrowing for the amount of money I think you're gonna earn in investments. So Brian's job, figuring out we've got 10 million, we don't need to spend the money right away. So how do we maximize that $10 million of resource and turn that money in the bank into project funds? So that's on the next page. So this is why I told you don't get too worried about that negative. I think you've got potentially $600,000 of investment earnings that you could realize if you sold the bonds on schedule like I have them. And if you realize that, then you can sell less sales tax debt. That debt limit problem on the prior page goes away.
And is this part of the reason, this debt limit thing is part of the reason that we're only doing 10 million at this point, right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, so the sequencing is being driven by that debt limit number.
You said if we sell it out on the schedule you suggest, what factors would cause us to not sell it on that schedule?
Slower valuation growth would cause some delays. It may cause you to need to commit some more cash over the next couple of years while you get more debt limit capacity. So in other words, advancing the anticipation of selling sales tax bonds by using some of your cash on hand. So you've built up a nice balance there, and that's also a cushion for your ongoing needs, boiler replacement or whatever it is. That's part of your cushion, but it also gives you some financial flexibility if you don't hit your valuation growth in each year sequentially. Now, we're currently using about 80% of your average valuation growth in our modeling, so we're not pushing the envelope on that, but we do need to just monitor that.
Well, follow up.
Yeah.
It's based on their valuation growth. Give me a feel for what causes that to go up or down.
Well, assessments on property will likely cause it to go up, but that'll probably be the next assessment cycle. It won't be next year. But then that will get pulled back by changes in rollback rates at the state level. So if all the valuations in the state on residential property went up 15%, we have state law that keeps it from going up more than 3% statewide, so the rollback rate would change by 12. Sometimes you get caught in a pocket where your rural area may not go up fast enough, and then you get kind of sideways and, hey, we went up 12%, but the metro went up 22. So rollback rate changed by 12, and we got 0% growth on a residential, even though they went up 12%. The good news is that 12% growth shows up on the debt limit side. It just gets mixed around in the levy side. So we need the valuation for both. So I'm not super concerned about the debt limit. I'm a little bit more concerned about the tax levy side, but Brian and I have already worked out a plan on that. So we are not that concerned about the 233 as it sits right now. We don't see any reason to communicate, oh, because of rates going up 0.5%, we can't keep that promise. We think it's all within your wheelhouse to be able to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, crystal clear. If that was the easy version, I would hate to hear the harder.
Yeah.
So you're looking for maybe a 3% assessment?
That's what we've got built in right now.
And that's reasonable for Shelby County, Iowa. I imagine you could
Yeah,
have a feel for
your
that.
district's been closer to 3.6, 3.7.
3.6 historically.
Yeah.
The other thing is on the investment income, not that you really know what it's gonna do, but he's got it illustrated at 3%, and actually there's one fund that could go out right now and get 3.74 today.
Yeah, there's,
Is that going on like pre-models, pre-COVID though? Like post-COVID, we don't necessarily know that that's gonna hold true.
on well,
On the evaluation.
yeah, it's gonna be an interesting year for valuation.
I would think so.
We think valuations are definitely going up on residential property. I mean, you can look at what's going on. It's just, how do you fall within the statewide mix?
Well, we're probably at an interesting place post-COVID where the models might not indicate what happened.
Yes. You get a big lag in Iowa property tax system. So you're operating a budget right now based on all the homes that were built in 2020. So that's your 23 budget. Your 24 budget will be based on all the homes that were built in 2021. Your fiscal 25 budget then is the first time you realize really what's happened in the last year or so with the residential price appreciation. So it lags.
Sure.
Is the built into it payments or into your logarithm is the slow declining enrollment figured in?
Yeah,
something you take into consideration.
We've got some flexibility built. We're growing your total revenue numbers in the sales tax by 1.5%. Statewide values have typically grown closer to 2.5 to 3. There has been a little bit of change in law, so we do think we should back down from that 3. But that also gives you some room if you decline 0.5% on enrollment each year, that you would still be in a good shape to realize the assumptions that we have built in there.
Thank you. And another question is the callable feature. Are we going to discuss that or mention that?
Yeah, so these current bonds are callable in 2030.
And would you explain that?
Yeah.
What that means?
So it's always a balancing act, whether your bonds are, you have the ability to pay them off anytime, or you do what I call more of a standard prepayment. So your bonds are callable, I think, 2030, which is the 7.5-year mark. Normally on a 20-year schedule, we'd see 8 or 9, maybe 10 years is the call date. But each year that you shorten the call, meaning the date that you can prepay without any penalty, you're going to pay a higher rate today. So if you pay a higher rate today, what does that mean for you? Well, that's going to upset the apple cart of your scenario. So we try to kind of thread the needle for what industry standard is, while giving you some ability to push it forward. We think when we get to the sales tax debt, you'll have a little bit more flexibility. But the fact that you're in a 4% rate, if rates do go down in the future, you have the ability to potentially refinance at a later date. And there's been very few bond issues that we've worked on that we haven't refinanced at some point. You did that with both your GO and last sales tax bonds, where you thought, hey, these are great rates when we did them. Well, market fluctuations, recessions, all that stuff tend to change interest rates. Now, I'm a little bit more.
Until 7.5 years though. This
Yep.
it cannot, it's locked in for 7.5, right?
Yep, correct.
Okay.
Yep, so you got a fixed rate locked in for 7.5 years.
I was gonna ask you, I guess I don't understand your business all that well, but I'm used to construction where you can have options. Is it not even worth looking at an option, saying on a 5-year callable? Could you gotten 2 bids on it, or is that detrimental to putting out
We
the
typically
bids?
haven't done that because when you're on a sealed bid process, then that creates a lot of variability in how you would approve a bid. So we typically do set a standard and then move. If you were to take that 3-year call, 5-year call, or whatever it would be today, you would certainly get less bids and you would be paying a higher interest rate. That part we do know. So
Could
we
you
want
estimate, can you have any idea what that might be?
we could take the same rates that you have right now and plug a different call date, and that's going to raise your rate probably by 0.2% if we went down to a 5-year call. And that's just a shoot from the hip number.
Hey, that's okay.
I appreciate that. No, I appreciate it.
Historically, we did really well on, a few years ago, didn't we, Brian? We had,
We did the Geo bond we did in 2012.
2012.
And then we did the revenue bond in 2015, I believe.
Yep.
And
but when we refinanced, it was a really
we saved considerable amount of dollars.
That's an important factor.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another important question, which may be a difficult question, is the crystal ball. The rates that went from 0 to 4% as far as the Fed rate in just 11 months, and it's very difficult to predict the future. But there's little doubt that from now till January, it'll probably go up another percentage point, because they're talking at least 0.5% in December and probably in January. I think that's a fairly safe bet. Beyond that, I wouldn't even predict. But does that, this option of doing more, and I didn't know if everyone knows that, because if we do it once a year, we save 0.25%. It's an Iowa law, if I'm saying that right, that 0.25% gets taken off of our rate because of doing it in these smaller chunks, the 10 million at a time. But if we'd have done the 32 million, it might have been much higher anyway, but that automatically.
Yeah, so there's an exemption that's called the small issuer exemption. So if you're a government entity and you sell less than $10 million of debt in a calendar year, then the purchasers of your bonds get a different federal tax deduction. We commonly will call it bank qualified debt. So it allows certain types of organizations to then pass through a lower rate. Historically, we've seen that be as much as 0.4%. Sometimes it's as low as 0.1, 0.15. So from your standpoint, we typically try to manage it, because the other reason is we kind of have to. Based on your debt limit numbers, we really can't go that much faster anyway, so we might as well try to accomplish it as we go. Now, as we go into next year, we'll look at the rates. If the opportunity exists that, well, maybe we should just lock rates, and we feel good about locking rates, because if you say crystal ball, I can lock in non-bank qualified rates, even if they're 0.25% higher, maybe that's better than taking interest rate risk on 10 million for 6 months. So we'll have more on those conversations. If you want the Bloomberg interest rate forecast, which is just a group of economists that throw their stuff together, that was on that Market Update 8. So you can kind of see what they're thinking the 10-year U.S. Treasury rate will be, maybe a little bit higher in Q1, but perhaps lower by the time we get to Q3 and Q4 of next year.
So it's Q3 and Q4.
Yep.
So what you're saying is what, number one, we need to be looking ahead. You've got 10 million of 32 million borrowed. So the next one will be, next borrowing bid opportunity will be in 2023, in one of the quarters of that year. And so when we sit here in January, is it likely that we'll be looking at maybe a 0.25% or 0.5% increase in the borrowing rate?
I don't necessarily think so, and part of the reason that if you go back to market update 1, because the market update 1 shows what the Fed's done with their rates, right? And I think you can pretty succinctly take those rates and de-link them from each other because they don't move in tandem. I think it's probably going to be like slide 4.
Sorry, Travis, I'm
That's
trying to
good.
go fast on the other side.
So you can see that there is a long period of time from 2009 to 2016 where the Fed kept the rates at 0. So if your rates follow the Fed, then you would expect no change of rate. So go to market update 4. So this is your 10-year borrowing rate, and we can see from 12 to 16 that rates went from 3.5 to 5, back down to 3.5, up to 4, back down to 3, up to 4, all within that 2012 to 16 time period when the Fed held rates at 0. But the rates were 0 from the Fed, right? Why did we see this fluctuation? Well, there's a lot more going into this than just the overnight borrowing rate. It's an active market that's not just a bank loan based on an overnight or a spread to some benchmark. It's an active buyer-seller market with supply-demand constraints as well. So I don't necessarily think rates will be higher or lower going into next year. I think we just pivot when we get to January and get new valuations, and we bring the information to you and say, hey, we had a great year of valuation growth. This gives me a lot of confidence that you could potentially sell more of your debt now as opposed to sequencing. I think that is a bigger thing than trying to guess where the market's going to be. I always say, can you limit your downside risk? That rates could go up. And that's usually the filter by which I'm looking at it. Because I'm not one to say, hey, you might have an opportunity if you just wait and we think the market's going to go down 0.25%. You're never going to hear that come from us. So we're always looking at how do you minimize the amount of risk you're taking as a district. And so we'll be kind of walking you through that.
So 2009 would have been good for a bond, but terrible for your 401k, right?
Well,
I mean,
2009.
that was a rough couple years.
Yeah, I mean, 2009's interest rates, I mean, you're 5% on 20-year borrowing rates. So it was not necessarily, I think your sales tax when you borrowed in 2009 was like 5.25 maybe?
It's higher than that.
550?
It was closer to 6.
Around 6.
Was it closer to 6?
I think it was closer to 6 if I remember.
So the next bond issue will be the revenue bonds, is that correct?
Don't know for sure.
Don't know for sure.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll talk about that if we want to
Okay.
take, where do you want your risk?
Okay.
Where's the risk in your scenario? If the most important thing for you is making sure that we can execute on the 233, then I take the downside risk, and now you've got 20 million of your 22.9 locked up, and so your taxpayers then have that part covered. You've got a little bit more flexibility on the sales tax, because it just cost you a couple laptops.
But for that, do we go off of what de novo says we need when?
We have that, a timeline wise?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have that, and they work with them, so yet we're all working together.
Yep.
So
But, yeah.
do we pay them separately?
Yeah, they're two separate companies, yes. We've worked with Piper Sandler before de novo was even on board. Brian has
Right.
worked with them, yes.
So we're paying them something separate to do all of this?
Yes,
For us?
yes.
And that's a good question. You are a fiduciary, correct?
Right.
Yeah, with respect to the municipal advisors and the GO bonds, our role is as a fiduciary to the district.
And I'll say you build up a lot of capital trust, as you mentioned, because being here we really appreciate, because it helps a lot to understand some of this stuff. So
Yeah, it came at you fast and furious since the election, so I'm like, well, we need to have a little sit-down talk, and I know this is maybe a little bit longer, but we want to kind of keep these numbers in front of you. Don't be afraid to ask questions. There's no stupid questions.
Oh, sure there is.
So we'll just cycle, and we'll cycle through them. Usually it's a case of if there's what you would perceive as a stupid question, it's usually because I didn't explain something well enough in my mind. So
I'm going to take a stab and try to come up with a stupid question.
You can do that, yeah. There are definitely stupid questions.
A couple of years ago, you were here in this room and we talked quite a bit about 5-year projections and solvency ratios. And is that disconnected from This whole picture? or
Not
is
to
that
your
it?
bond, not to your bond rating. No,
No.
that's the part that is bond rating focused. So you did the things to keep any further slide on your bond rating at that time.
So we're still on track to be where we want to be on that
Yep.
kind of stuff?
Yep, correct. Very much so. Probably even a little bit ahead of schedule, Brian. Would you agree?
Jed, I'd like to mention too that in one of the contracts that we signed for them, there was a 0.05%. 0.005 is what Piper Sandler gets, which if their cap is, I believe, about 105,000 selling all of the bonds. And they said that they look at that though on the work that they have to put into it. But when I work with professionals, I always like to know what the cost is, not a percentage
Yeah.
somewhere
Yeah.
in the
Well, some
fine
of these
print.
look like the graphs that they used on Titanic to know how deep the iceberg was under versus above.
Yep.
So,
That's comforting.
Well, that's refreshing.
that's what it looks like.
Thanks to the Titanic, right?
Especially those last 3 pages.
Right here.
I might have to have a few cups of coffee. Get through some of that.
Yep. No, those are more there, so if I have to answer a question, I have the data in front of me in the spreadsheet, so all that to be said, you've got what amounts to is just a resolution. I think the way you have your agenda set up, I think you have a motion to consider the bids, and then you'll have a resolution to direct the sale.
But it's accepted,
What's that?
it's accepted. You
The-
guys accepted the bid, or we
They
have to?
recommend, they recommend.
Okay, you're recommending
Yeah,
accepted,
we're
yeah.
recommending
Yeah.
acceptance of the bid from
Yeah.
Northland.
3.9544 something.
Yeah, like you want to go out to the 6 decimal places in there. It's all in that resolution that was prepared by your bond attorney.
What's Jody thinking back there?
I'm just taking it all in. What's that?
You disappeared from the table.
Well, I wanted to,
Yeah.
I wanted to see him.
Any other questions or discussion? Great information.
I sure am glad that you asked him to give us the simple version.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Yeah, the only problem is it's
First
just
thing
not,
Saturday night, I can absolutely agree with.
it's just not super simple. So once we get through the more detailed conversation, now the updates will be able to be, okay, so this valuation growth did or didn't happen. So at some point, we do have to open the hood and look at all the details, and then going forward, we should be able to keep it a little simpler. So I appreciate your admonition to keep it simple. But I also have that thing called, I gotta be very thorough in my fiduciary responsibility on the GO bonds. So,
Thorough but simple. That's kind of like,
yeah, that's a little hard. You guys do not have what I'd call a simple financing plan, right? There's districts that we work on projects and they vote a bond issue and they're gonna sell it in a month and they're done. Like there's no complicating factors, but what we wanted to do was maximize your project dollars within your tax impact that you were talking, as well as put enough resources in to keep it from being, a 405 bond issue. So all of those complicating factors to get to your financing plan, ultimately to get something that you thought, well, this is really simple. We can explain it to the public. We're gonna do $32 million of projects and it's gonna cost $233 on our levy. Yep. Underneath all the hood of that was all of this stuff.
Yeah.
So that's how we got there. So again, you got your agenda items, and if you guys have other questions, but we recommend you accept the low bid from Northland.
Okay. And you mentioned a 405 bond issue. What's that? Is that negative?
Oh, just that's what you had last time. You had the highest, you were moving your levy limitation from $2.70 to $4.05 per thousand. And so our goal here, by using the sales tax, to keep you from needing to go to that
233.
to that higher limit.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Any other comments, or could we have a motion to approve the consideration of the sealed bids?
We have to go.
Oh, wait.
What's that?
So that was the end of the discussion.
That was
Yeah.
just discussion, now we gotta go to action items.
Yeah.
Okay, so we don't have to have a motion on that. Okay, very good. So now we will move, thank you, to item number E, action items number 1, approval of the resolution directing the sale of the general obligation bonds, series 2022, not to exceed $10 million. So here we have discussion.
There you go.
And that would all to be to Northland Securities.
To Northland Securities. The interest rate is approximately 3.95. 20-year bond, $10 million. The short version of the details.
So you're looking for a motion?
Yes, please.
So moved.
So moved by Jade. And how about a second?
Yeah.
And Al will second it.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, we got Jade on the motion.
We have a roll call on this. This has to be roll call.
So those will be filled in, I just have to sign the Travis stuff, so we'll put the correct information. We need to
Yeah,
know.
which one do you have up? I can give you the blanks for those.
Okay.
We want to give them to Catherine?
Do you want Catherine to just
Right.
write them in right now?
You should have an updated resolution that came from Allers this afternoon.
I got it.
Oh,
Okay.
you do have it. I didn't.
It just wasn't in
It's
our
just not on the
packet.
agenda.
It's just, yeah.
Link to the
Yeah.
I
agenda.
didn't want to change
Because
the
we didn't-
agenda. I
Yeah,
can't change the
we
agenda.
can't, yeah.
Gotcha.
So, Brian seems to think this needs to be a roll call vote, so can we do
That's
a
the way
roll call
I'm reading
vote?
it.
Yep.
Okay, is that something, is the completed
Yes.
document, could it be on the screen? Because that's what we're really voting on.
Did you get it?
Or is that not important?
When did we get it? Because I,
It was one of about 1 billion emails.
It was like 3 o'clock,
Yeah.
3 o'clock, 3:30.
It just seems like it would be
It would
nice
have
to
come
have
from Karen
a
Bigler.
document that has the actual resolution that we're voting on.
Look at it from, I think it might have come from Nita Jackson.
No, it came
Karen
from
from
Karen.
It was
Karen
Okay.
Bigler.
That seems fitting that someone named Karen would send all this info.
I didn't get it. I mean, this was last sent, this distribution list I looked at all these.
Just a second.
I'm just gonna send it to you, Jenny. Okay?
Okay.
Well, and maybe that's not that big a deal since the motion is clear in the way Jim worded it. So maybe we don't need that, but it just seems like it would be
Well, we
comfortable.
can also just kind of, one second,
second.
just sent it, it's just,
Here, I'm going to want to just make the numbers in.
yeah.
Okay,
that's what
I'm gonna
I was
scan it
saying
to
that
you.
would-
I'm gonna
No,
scan
I
it.
just sent it to her, he sent it to, she sent it to me.
Yep.
You got it up there?
I just don't have it yet, it's just taking a little
Oh,
while
I see.
here.
Taking its own sweet time.
Okay.
Yes,
Good to
there's
see all
only
your
about
emails this week.
4.
There we go,
Did it come? Okay, I was like, I'll send it again.
okay,
It's the
the first one,
Second one.
second one? Okay. So we'll do roll call vote.
Yeah, that's what we got in our, oh, there's
Yep,
the,
there's the purchase price.
that's the actual, that's the whereas part, that's what we're voting on. Yeah.
3.953.
Okay,
That's very
Okay.
and
consistent.
then we'll have Jim sign it.
Okay, you want to read those amounts in there, or should we? So the purchase price, what does it
Okay,
say
you
there,
want me to
Jenny?
read?
Yes, please.
$10,153,875. $10,153,875.90 is the purchase price from Northland Securities of Minneapolis, Minnesota. Interest cost is $4,797,755.35, and the true interest cost, or the rate, is 3.953,174%.
Now, those numbers are a little bit different than, oh, that was
Yep, the bottom.
before recite. and-
Bottom table.
I got you. There you go. Thank you. Good.
Very good.
Okay.
So the motion has been made and seconded.
We need a roll call vote,
Okay,
please.
so
You gotta work
we'll have a roll call vote. Jade Albertson, how do you vote?
With a starburst in my mouth. A, dash.
And Greg Blatt?
Aye.
Aye.
Joni Larson, thank
Aye.
you. And Joe Hertzberg.
Aye.
Very good.
Al Hazelton
Al
is an aye.
Hazelton is aye. Okay, the motion is passed. I also
You
vote
got
aye.
it.
And Jim Reichel votes aye. Okay. We
Thank you.
accomplished it.
Okay.
Thank you all very much.
Okay, so that's
Too
done.
complicated.
But it's a big number, so it's good.
10 million.
All right.
Right?
Yes, okay, so we will move to action item 2, E2, approval of resolution authorizing the redemption of outstanding general obligation school refunding bond series 2012.
And Travis said being he's here, he'd explain this.
Yep. So
I could do it.
this original bond issue, you were paying off with sales tax money. So this goes back to your 2008 general obligation bond. It was a 15-year financing at the time that you did it. You refinanced it then in 2012, and so you've got a small amount remaining, which you budgeted for during this calendar year, sales tax money to pay it off. So you have the opportunity to take about 6 months of interest off of your loan. You have the money on hand, so you're going to take the opportunity to pay it off. It also just cleans the slate. That project's over and done with, gone. So you have again, I think you have a roll call vote. You'll need a motion in a second.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Discussion.
This is basically to clean up our credit rating and all that good stuff. I mean, put us in a position where it's appropriate to go forward with this other.
Yeah, you didn't need to do it with this one, but it certainly is, it's helpful to just move forward.
Yeah, we've got the funds there, and we're just saving interest. It makes no sense now.
Brian gets this idea. This one didn't come from us. This came from Brian.
Makes sense.
It is about, what, 15 or 20,000 of interest savings?
You know, off the top of my head, I'd have to really go look.
I think it's a little less than that.
Yeah, I want to say it was 8 or 10,
Okay.
somewhere in
But
there.
we're done with the project, so.
Yeah, you get to pay that one component of your debt off.
And this is a roll call too, right?
Very good.
Yeah, so we still need a motion.
I will make that motion.
Okay, Greg makes the motion, and a second. Second by Joe.
Now we need a roll call.
Very good. Jade Albertson.
Yes, aye.
Greg Blatt.
Aye.
Joni Larson, aye.
Joe Hersberg, aye.
Aye.
Jim Reichel, aye.
Good job, Jim. Catherine didn't have to yell at you that time.
Thank you. We'll get through them. Okay, so we are up to action item, this will be E3, the personnel report.
You having trouble, Jenny? Sorry. There's not anything too crazy on the personnel report.
I can pass this around if that helps, if anyone has any questions.
We've got the early retirees on there, and we've got just our kind of our openings that we've had a while. We did post new jobs this month or this last week, and we've already started to get some interest, so that's really, really good.
What's our plan if we don't get any interest?
We
Is
get
there more
really,
places?
really creative.
Okay, what does that mean?
I will, look to see who has other, many teachers have different endorsements, so we may have to ask people to teach things that they may have. We can look at substitutes, we can look at people that are retired, we can look at, I know there's an organization right now that does some things online where it's like a live teacher online teaching. So I mean, lots of districts are thinking outside the box. We were Catherine was, she said we've already started to get some really good applicants. I've had some people reach out to us and ask about specific jobs, which is really good too. So we're lucky that this is a really great place to work and people want to be here. So we're excited about that.
And we're able to post in November.
And posting now is huge, yeah.
I mean, we'll see if it's huge, right? We'll see if it makes a difference being able to post it earlier. Like, when will we know by?
If you've gotten any calls that already had later.
It will be interviewing
Post,
next
see what
week
numbers.
is what.
But
or
actually
next month,
getting
I mean.
employees is
Well,
what we'll see, right? If it makes a difference.
Yeah, but
When
if
will
we
know
don't, if we
by?
aren't able to post until March, then they may have, many districts
I-
signed 2-year contracts, so they may have already signed a contract and we can't. Right now, they can not sign their contract in another district if they're
Right.
here.
Plus we have
So-
September or December graduates that we can really start talking to.
Right, I mean, I know we talked about all that,
Yeah.
I'm just saying by when should we expect to have people hired? Will they?
I mean, we'll
As soon as
start
we possibly
interviewing as
can.
soon as we
Yep.
can. We'll jump on
Put the
these
name
right
on the
now.
line.
Yep.
I know Jeff I don't know how many student teachers he's got, but he's got quite a few at the elementary. So that's exciting too, because we'll wanna, how many student teachers did you say you have?
I think we're up to 4, maybe
Yeah.
5 now.
So that's really good.
Second
So we
semester.
can try to take advantage of the student teachers that are there as well.
I had another question. On Mr. Mueller becoming the middle school athletic director, we talked a little bit because Davis has some administrative duties too. So will he be able to fulfill everything now, or is he getting additional administrative duties with Bill taking this stipend?
He's doing more on the instructional side with Casey's direction. So he's an assistant principal and an athletic director. In many places, their athletic director is the athletic director. And then in many places too, there is a separate middle school athletic director. So
Right, but when we hired him, he was doing both these things, right? And Bill wasn't.
I don't
Bill's
know
just
because I
doing it
wasn't
this
here
year.
when we hired him. I'm not sure. There's always been a stipend for a middle school athletic director. We did not create that, so.
But we
I'm
haven't used
assuming-
it, right?
I don't know. I don't know if I don't know if we've used it in the past. Did we use middle school athletic
Yes.
director? Yes, we did.
Yes, we have in
Okay.
the past.
Like when did we use it?
It's a few years ago. If you wanted an exact year, I'd probably have a hard time getting
No,
one.
I'm just
but I would
curious.
say 2, 3, 4 years ago-ish.
I'm curious if it's like he gets more administrative duties or he just wasn't able to fulfill what he was supposed to do. And then we had to obviously now pay the stipend again to,
There's a lot of games that overlap, so there's a lot of middle school games, there's a lot of high school games, so it was just easier for Bill to.
Those two jobs are asking a lot of money.
To take that on. So that's what we just decided as an administrative team. Bill said he would step up and take the extra. So we found that stipend and said we would. And there are additional instructional duties that he's doing with Casey, yes. For example, he's gonna be with the special ed, or not special ed, but the history PLC during Wednesday's meeting, and we're starting to work on standards. So each administrator kind of has a different group, so that's gonna be Davis's group. Yes, we're asking him to do some different things that are outside of the AD realm, I guess, if that's what you mean.
yeah, I'm just curious how we got through that period of time without paying the middle school stipend. Is it because now there's more duties, or is it because he's not able to make all of it happen?
I don't know the answer to that because I wasn't here. So, I mean, we can look that, we can get you that answer. When it was last used, I don't know.
I mean, I think it's a reasonable question, just how were we able to do it before, or, I'm just curious if we're paying the same salary for less duties.
No. I don't think people realize, just to be honest with you, the amount of extra hours that an athletic director spends outside of the school day. And it's a lot of weekends, it's a lot of evenings, and it's,
He technically needs less. He could do his job better if he had less.
I'm not against that, I'm just asking if he was hired initially for all of this and that's the salary he's receiving, is he doing more to continue in that salary, or was it just too much to do all of it?
Are you asking what has changed to warrant the other change?
Thank you, yes.
we're adding additional instructional responsibilities.
So adding, okay.
So we switched over and took away. I don't know if we are adding, he was hired as an athletic director and an administrator, assistant principal. Greg, you're gonna say something?
No.
Okay, I thought you had something. It's a big job, and many districts our size have just an athletic director, and then they have an assistant principal and a principal. We don't. So, and Davis can't be in 5 places at once. Honestly, Bill was at a lot of the middle school things anyway. So it was just like, maybe it would just be easier if we could just split that up a little bit and help people out. And then he's also got some additional instructional
Sounds like
stuff.
part of the creativity you were talking about.
Well, yeah, I mean, you just
Stuff.
try to, yeah. There's a lot of hours that are extra for an athletic director.
I wouldn't want to be one.
I'm not against the stipend, I wanted to know why we needed to put out more money. If we're, having this position be paid again, I wanted to know why we were doing that. So, it's not personal, I just wanted to know.
I think we can find out when we last used it. If it was just a couple of years ago, then it was created for some reason, I guess, because we did not
It was
create
on
the
our salary
stipend.
schedule.
Okay. Any other?
Okay, any other discussions on the personnel report? That's item 3.
Are you, I had a question, nutrition? Finding a replacement for that, or how's that being handled?
Just resigned last week. So we were out of town, so we gotta get together and figure it out. But we're gonna get creative, and I think we have a few ideas, but none that we'd like to present just
Right,
yet.
perfect, that's fine.
Okay.
You're on top of it though, of course.
Yes.
Very good.
Thank you for
Oh, and we
asking.
have 7 early retirements, is
Yep.
that right? And we have, but the 8th one,
Nobody has.
nobody has yet.
Nope.
And is there a deadline for that, or can they
Yeah.
submit it?
There is a deadline.
There is a deadline.
Want to say it was last.
Yeah, it's this,
Yeah.
So it's either has been or is
Close.
very
I
close.
want to say
I
it
wanna
was the
say-
15th, but don't quote.
Okay.
I'll look it
So
up.
chances are it's just gonna be those 7.
Yeah. 7 of the 8, right, Joni?
Yes, yeah.
Correct.
The 8th one is not going to,
Materialize.
correct, that's right. Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Okay, could I have a motion to approve the personnel report?
So moved.
We got Al on that. Catherine, and we got a second by Greg. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nay. Next, we have action item E4, approval of the 2020 early graduates, 2022 early graduates. Any question or discussion about the early graduates? Okay, then can I have a motion to approve the early graduate schedule?
So moved.
So moved by Joe and seconded.
Second.
Okay, we got Joni on that. All those in favor say aye.
I
Those opposed, nay. Next, we have action item E5, the interagency contract for special education instruction program for the 22 year to the 23 school year, Denison. And we'll ask.
That would just be a
Jenny to-
student with, I'm struggling with the computer. I cannot get this off the screen now. That's just a student who is attending there and gets special education services. So we didn't link the contract because it has names in there.
Sure.
So,
Okay, any discussion on that item?
Scroll back up.
Okay, can I have a motion to approve the interagency contract as I read it? You're trying to,
starting over, Brian.
Also moved.
so moved by Al and seconded,
Sure. Joe?
got Joe seconding it. All those in
Just a question on that.
Yeah, for now.
Say sure.
What'd you say, Al?
Something that should be on the motion?
That's just a contract. It's just a contract for services. We haven't gotten billed yet.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
that's just a
Okay.
contract.
Good question. Okay. Motion's on the table. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Okay, that motion carried. Next is action item E6, approval of the modified supplemental amount for LEP instruction beyond 5 years, the amount of $12,462.24.
All right.
This is an annual thing. It's what they call this is on-time funding. Annually, there's 3 things you can have, and we actually have 2 of them. One of them, the one we don't have is if you have new open enroll out kids, or open enroll in kids that you didn't have last year, so they provide you on-time funding. This one is approval for the limit LEP. I'm not going to try to even say it. Limited English proficient. Thank you.
Okay.
And what it is if you have kiddos that are in the program over 5 years, then you get a weighting for that.
Yeah.
This is a weighting. They give you this much in authority and funding. We have this one actually annually.
Okay.
So it's authority, not cash, and we want to go for it.
Yes.
Good observation. Any other discussion? Okay, can we have a motion to approve this modified supplemental amount for
So
LEP
moved.
instruction? So moved by Joni and seconded.
Second.
We got that by Greg. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Okay, action item E7, approval of modified supplemental amount for increased enrollment in the amount of $175,806.60.
It's the same thing except for when you have increased enrollment, rather than having to wait a year to get that authority back, they're giving it to you right away.
Okay, so
I move to approve.
Second.
okay, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Okay, action item E8, approval of resolution for the school director redistricting of Harlan Community School District. And I imagine these can be taken all under one. A, there is written description of the Harlan Community School Director District, and B is the Harlan Community School District Director District Plan Map.
Because we did this.
I
We
made.
discussed it last.
Yeah,
week.
we've discussed this already. This
Yeah.
is just us approving it, so,
Beth did say all 3 things have to be on the agenda, but it can be one blanket approval.
Okay,
so so there is just a written description kind of that describes it, then there's a picture of it.
I read the written description of my ward and I had no idea where I was at.
We did directions home.
And I know the ward pretty well. Part of it.
and there was a
Sorry.
consultant hired to
Yes,
recommend
oh,
this.
yes, we did
Based off
hire a
what
consultant,
for.
and every school district in the state has had to do this or look at it. They didn't have to hire her, but it was very minimal cost.
Yeah, when we inquired about this, they said for a district your side, you're either gonna have to hire somebody that understand the legal terms to do it, or you hire this person. Anybody that doesn't have a communication director or something like that on hand is gonna do this, so.
Well, the good thing for us is that the lines changed a little bit, but it didn't, not
Yeah.
any of our residences for our districts changed, so none of us got bumped out of our district.
Yeah,
That's
we didn't
happened in the
have to have
past.
another. Yeah, we didn't have to have another.
I'm still in a job.
So,
Yeah.
Okay.
still-
I do believe
good free
Steel
one.
cage match then?
You had 2 people in one district.
Well, that's the first thing we check is to make sure.
Yeah.
So the next election, if people want to, that aren't on the board, they'll just have to look and make sure they're in the same one or see which one they're in.
Really, the only difference is I think the 2 West Harlans had to pull a little bit of rural in, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah, she tried not to do too much.
And that's so they can keep the population equal.
Yep, equal.
It has to be within .1 of
Yeah.
most largest.
Because Joe, you're yellow, right? 7?
And after, if we approve, then Mark Maxwell said that he
Joe's
would
7 yellow.
get us a new map and,
Joe's
Or
son.
Joe's 3.
Oh, West Side.
This is
Monty.
Monty, Joe, and then the.
That was, okay. You're 6.
And where's the location of that
I'm
map?
5.
Is that on the
He's
board
6.
somewhere?
Yes, we have a big one out here, and then
Okay.
we have another one with just
I'm
like
4.
specific addresses, and Mark said he would
Agreed.
definitely do
Yep.
that for
Did
us
we get
once
the
it was
grid?
approved.
Did we get
So I'm
one
there,
today?
I think
I'm
you,
No, we've sent the
right
resident.
there, because that's on
Yep.
on it.
Yeah, and it was actually
Two.
the last time too, I think. I don't think it's any different.
And the map will be on the
James
school
Green?
website also for people, right?
Yes.
Ken
It's
put it
ready.
on there.
Also-
Yeah,
Alice
I don't know.
one.
if we
There you
put
go.
it on
Now you know where it was from.
9 or
Who's 5?
We'll wait until,
Joni?
I'm 5.
yeah, we
five.
can put it on there, Al.
Got it?
I think I've got it written.
Yeah.
Eavesdropping.
Other questions or comments? Okay, how about a motion to approve the resolution for school director redistricting of Harlan Community School District, along with item A there, the written description, and item B, the map.
So moved.
So moved by Jade and seconded. Got Joe on that. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Okay, action item E9, policy review schedule, second reading.
I did want to ask something on, a point of order on that. Did we make any changes on that since the first reading?
On which one? I'm sorry.
You want?
Because
Oh, you and I talked a little bit, so I would actually like to table it so we can have further discussion on it before we vote on it.
Table just one of the following.
Do you want to just have the further discussion right now so that,
We did discuss it some, and I think we could address the concern perhaps, if we could save some time perhaps. This is on, could I mention that Jade had a concern about the wording on one of the policies, and this is particular, if you can see, go to, it's code number 6053E1. And it's a little bit of a discrepancy there, as Jade pointed out, in the 1, 2, 3, fourth paragraph. It says the committee,
Sorry.
Don't do that.
Is that this one?
Yeah, so it's going from what our current policy is it has to be a committee formed outside a non-biased committee if there is a objection or a question raised on a book or some sort of educational material being used. A committee has to be formed, and they fill out a document of why they want to object to the material. Our current policy says that it is up to the person forming the objection whether or not they could give an oral presentation to the external committee about why they don't think it should be in the school or whatnot. The IASB recommended language switches that from the person being able to decide if they would like to be heard to the committee deciding if they think it warrants a oral explanation. I personally think that is not a good switch because to me it gives, I don't know, people in our district or parents a limited role, influence. And I did ask how many times we've had somebody come and want that to happen, and 0 so far is what I think we've gotten. So I don't, maybe in bigger school districts they need to go to it to cut down on the amount of time it's taking. I just don't really see the need for switching it to a committee role versus a singular person role or a parental role.
So basically, it's that one word right there, the committee shall, at its,
You have to take out.
just shall hear an oral presentation. So so if you have something, then it means we as a committee have to listen to it.
And who is the committee?
The committee is community,
we don't have one formed, but it would be formed
Right.
if it's.
Yeah.
Okay.
committee members and.
But is it the, it's not the board?
No, it would be
It's not
outside of
the
the
outside the
boardroom
correct.
from
Okay.
community members.
Okay, not a board member would not be.
Also
Jenny, can
was
you go
on-
down a little bit?
I was also on
This way
policy
or-
review
which,
The other direction.
If you go down to the next paragraph though, oh Jenny, go to the next paragraph, the first sentence says the committee will listen to the views of all interested persons. So that's kind of why Jenny and I were discussing your guys' comments. And we thought, well, that kind of took care of it, so I apologize for not adding it because I thought the committee will listen to the views of all interested persons before making recommendations encompassed your concern. But if you don't think that, then let's change it.
Well, I mean, I'm not upset about it. I think that with it being a second reading, I wasn't on policy review last month, so I don't know that I would have saw it, or it could completely be my fault. I don't personally know that there's a need to switch it to where the committee has the discretionary option to not hear somebody orally if they so wanted to.
I would sure like to hear, since this was authored by some people that know a lot more than I do, at IASB, I'd sure like to hear their reasoning for why it was. And so having said that, I think I would maybe
Which you were looking into that, right?
might be in favor of tabling it.
we didn't see too much explanation, so we can call.
Yeah, we can call, we can table this policy.
Broad community sentiment
I just think
attempts to impose personal standards.
It might make sense
That's why
to
they
table
want
it.
We did ask Sarah.
That's why they want
And
more.
Sarah kind of pointed out that same point
It
where it
almost feels
says
like less individual
We
opinion,
can revisit.
Yeah.
it.
but they're trying to
We just need to put it
make
on the
it
agenda and revisit.
I
fit
suppose they're afraid that if they open
I was just
the
broad community sentiment, and then one individual complaining
But they're
is definitely
changing
not
it.
broad community sentiment.
They're wanting to change it from an individual can decide if they want to versus the committee can decide. Maybe in some larger districts, to me, I don't personally like the idea of changing it to where a committee can decide if your standard or what you don't like is worthy to be heard or not. You can always
I
write
get
it.
that.
You can write it.
I get that.
No
but
matter what, you can write it, but then the committee out externally decides, yes, we'll hear an oral presentation, or no, we will not.
And does it put limits on the oral presentation time? I don't think it did that I saw.
I didn't see a time limit.
I am 100% for making sure anyone who feels they have a problem feels they've had opportunity of redress. But we also need to be concerned about how much they hold all the cards too. You know.
Well, the
if-
committee still makes the ultimate decision on if they think it's warranted.
Yeah.
We're basically limiting, though, another avenue of, say you're not a great, textual conceptualizer and you don't write a perfectly written out argument and it's hard to understand. The committee can say, we don't really terribly want to hear what you have to say orally.
So is this where, if somebody wanted to bring something forward, is this where they would go to the board at the beginning? At the
The committee would start first, the committee would go to the committee, and then the committee would recommend to the board what they felt. So ultimately, it still is a board decision. The committee is saying, and what Jade is saying is, what this is saying now is that the committee can decide after they get the written report, we'll listen to you, tell us orally.
But could Jade come, or not you, but anybody?
Yeah.
Could somebody come at the beginning of the board meeting and present their
Always,
opinion
I
then?
think you could always
Oh,
come
for
and
sure,
talk.
So,
yeah, they
but-
could always do that.
But what I'm asking is, so anybody can come and express a concern. I'm just trying to figure out what would be different if somebody had a concern. They could come.
To me, I don't know why we need to limit if it's not a problem. If we don't deem it in our district a problem, we're not getting 10 people a year. We've had 0 people a year. So to me, I don't personally like the idea of limiting something that's not a problem.
Right, so I think I'm saying the same thing. If a person has a problem or opinion, they can come to the board with or without a committee. Is that one?
But the policy states if you want to remove a book from the library or have that conversation, we'll make a committee from non-biased people
To evaluate that.
To evaluate
And
your
then it's not
concerns.
just like a personal or whatever that says. That it's just not one person's opinion being expressed, but the committee would get.
If I understand correctly, if somebody wanted to get something they deem inappropriate out of this classroom, they would go file the paperwork. A committee would be formed, and then they could go to the committee. And if this wording stands, the committee could say, you don't get to speak.
Correct.
Which I could see where that would eliminate it coming right to the board and the board having to decide if it's appropriate or inappropriate.
I think, to me, if you tell people the committee gets to decide whether you get to speak to them personally or not, it already escalates it to somebody unhappy saying, okay, you're not gonna let me speak, I'm gonna come to the board, or I just don't see the need to limit them presenting orally when it's.
Could you scooch that down just a little bit? So if I could just clarify this, what the discussion is what Jade has a concern with is that little phrase there, may at its discretion. I think Jade is feeling that may at its discretion should say the committee will. Just like the next sentence, which is a little contradictory because it says the committee will listen. She's saying the paragraph up above should say the committee will hear. And so it's those three little words that it shouldn't be at discretion.
That change?
Our policy right now says however they've labeled it, the person with the point of concern at their discretion may choose to address the board orally or not. So however we change it, that if the person, it wouldn't be changing it. However we not change it to the person is limited by the committee. So if you read the current policy.
The wording in the current policy.
Correct.
Do you have the wording
Should we
in the policy?
table this policy?
Well, I said that, but.
Do we have?
Did I say that clearly? Is that what's that question though? Is the
Do
may
you
at
have
its
the
discretion?
original?
Would it make
We
any
do.
sense
It's
to
right
get
here.
IESB's take on
that's
why
just-
they wrote it that way?
They just
Well,
added
we
that,
tried,
Jen?
right, yeah, we tried to see, do a little research, but there's nothing really written, so we can give them a call.
Yeah.
And
Can you scroll up though to see what the current policy states? Is it on there?
I don't think, is the current policy in here, Catherine?
Probably not with that reading.
Sits up there.
You'd have to get on the website.
It just seems like it makes sense that we would take a little more time and table this one, and since it's only I know it has to go back to a first reading if we change it, but that's not a big deal. And I would sure like to hear some
605.
IASB thought
not an
process.
E.
And it probably does have to do with the larger districts, but that
6053
could happen here too. So,
objection.
you know,
605.
I'm fine with us talking about it later. That's why I said I would like to
have some
table
more
it.
input, yeah.
So now you know my concerns with limiting, what I think is limiting.
Would you accept the help on that, or?
Sure. I think we're ready for it.
I mean, I'm not saying I'm always right, I just,
I would make a motion that we, out of the second reading, we pull out that IASB rewrite of 605.3E1 and have some further study on it before we decide whether to make that change or not.
they send the library one, because then we get a minute to discuss that. Because there's that word may that they want to add in there, where we may make our material public and we may not.
What's
Okay,
the
we have a
library-
motion on the
wait,
table.
What's the number you want to pull out, Jade?
Is it
605.3?
605.3E1.
3E1?
Yeah, but she just said there's another one she wants to pull out.
The library
It's
one.
the other second reading.
Okay,
You want to amend your
Keep going.
motion?
well, I wonder what
He
the
hasn't
other one,
really
I don't know what the other one is. I did make it, I
This,
did put it.
this
Oh,
one,
did you?
60505.
Okay.
Okay, so yes, I would make it, both of those, I would amend my motion. to both.
Motion to include 605.05, I believe it is,
Yep.
Catherine.
So, are we gonna discuss what this is, or are we just tabling it?
We're
gonna do
We're
research.
Okay, this one though too, right?
The second.
And the words in italicized are what they want to add.
tabling
The district may provide access to all parents. Well, why use the word
And do you
may?
want to amend it one
We
more
might,
time?
we might
and
not.
Say that we approve the rest of this second reading?
If that can be in the same motion, I
Yeah.
would say,
Can it be in the same motion?
my motion would be to approve the second reading with the exception of those two.
Okay.
But it may die for lack of a second.
And
will
I'll
second
put these
that
back
once you're done
on
writing.
first reading for next month.
I will second that once you've got it all
Thank
figured
you.
out. It's,
I have been in some roundtables with several school districts where this has been a major point of discussion, and so I think we want to be careful with it.
Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Okay, that motion carried, and so we're on to, I'm mixed up here.
First reading, 10.
Okay, we're on to, yes, item number 10, the policy review schedule, first reading.
Okay, so I'm just gonna tell you just a little bit of background here on this one, just before we approve it, is the IASB has, I don't even know if you want this background, but they have suggested that we incorporate basically all of the leaves for the classified and the certified staff into one policy where it would just be classified employee. If you could scroll down just a little bit for me, Jenny. Keep going. This one. Oh, sorry, it's your phone. So basically, 40902, employee leaves of absence, it would get rid of all of these policies that I have listed here. If you want to keep scrolling, Jenny, and it just basically says the board will offer the following leave to full-time regular licensed employees, and then just list them here.
It's sort of
And
a
it-
lot of duplication.
Yes, and it's basically, it's not changing any policy, well, I mean, it's not taking away leave or adding more leave, it's just making them one policy
All-encompassing.
and getting rid of like
Simplified it.
12. Yeah. So I just,
Yeah.
okay,
So the intent of the policy has not been changed?
Nope.
It's the organization?
correct.
We'll have another run at this in the second reading, so.
Very well stated.
Yes.
Yes, much better than what I did.
Okay, any discussion on that?
Surprisingly, no.
We're on the first reading now. Okay. Should I have a motion then to approve the first reading?
So moved.
I'll second.
Second by Jade. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Okay, so we accomplished that, and next we have action item E11, the consent agenda. And so we'll open this up for discussion. And here we have ABC, the minutes. You might note that there were 3 different meetings that we had minutes. And while mentioning that, there also is a board meeting on December 5. You might mark on your calendars. A special meeting for something to do with the financing of bonds. Maybe Brian knows what it's about.
My fault again.
No, I have it, I got it. It is the resolution authorizing issuance delivered to issuer. Brian?
Yeah, it's just another part of the bond.
Okay.
Okay, to be explained. And so also we have the accounts payable and the financial reports. Any discussion on those?
I didn't see anything that looked would be
Nothing look goofy, Al says.
different to me.
Could we have a motion then to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
So moved by Jane.
Second.
Second by Al. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. And the last item is H, adjournment. Could I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved by Jade and second.
You're quick.
Is that a second by Greg?
Sure. Yes.
Sure. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Those
You're
opposed, no.
You're a powerful, you wanted to be the first one.
No, no.